on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Great topic tonight, and I know that you'll want to chime in. I'm going to get right to it. We are talking about what is the latest with the soccer stadium. It seems to be what everybody is talking about across Nashville. Will it happen or won't it happen? That seems to be the big question right now. I got two guys here to help us talk through this issue. We have Caleb Hemmer from the Nashville Fairgrounds Board and Colby Sledge, Metro Council member from District 17, which includes the Nashville Fairgrounds. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Before we dive in, I want to read the latest from the mayor's office. This was sent to us today in regards to the stories that we've been doing on it. It says, considering the positive progress of the negotiations with the Nashville Soccer Holdings, we're unsure of the purpose of the petition. That's from Nashville SC. Surrounding campaign other than to unnecessarily confuse Nashville residents. To reiterate, Metro's commitment to the stadium deal has never been in question. Mayor Cooper remains committed to soccer success in Nashville. We look forward to announcing an agreement with Nashville Soccer Holdings. So that's where the mayor stands. I know you both side on the fact of let's get this deal moving forward. Let's start with demolition and get the stadium built. Where do you all see things right now? Colby, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I feel confident that the stadium's going to be built, that the development's going to be built around it. But I think there's been a lot of unnecessary conversation, back and forth, closed door dealings over the last couple of weeks. There is a great deal on the table. We had a good deal before. This is a great deal. There is no reason for this constant bickering and, quite frankly, statements like that from the mayor's office that indicate there's positive progress, yet we don't see any progress.
And is that your main hang-up right now? Because the deal has gotten better, so perhaps the delay was worth it, do you think?
Well, it's always good to talk through things, and I understand the mayor coming in, wants to review all deals, see if they're, up to snuff and great for Nashvillians. I think looking at the infrastructure costs and saying, can we do a little better? Perfectly fine conversation to have. Good questions to ask. But right now we're having a conversation that's nowhere near that. We're having a conversation about 2.5 acres on this massive property when everything else is ready to go.
And I want to get to that in just a second,
Sure.
The infamous HC at this point, right? Where does the Fair Board stand on all of what's happening?
Yeah, we've had a very long process of getting public input of a lot of stakeholders, including the soccer team, racing, the community at large. And we've just, as you know, the Fairgrounds also had a lot of history of starts and stops on redevelopment and strategic planning and whatnot. And so I think we are just at the point where we feel like it's ready to move forward. We've had these discussions, we've had the public input. We greatly appreciate the mayor coming in and providing his input and getting his opinions put forth between the different stakeholders. But again, we're ready for demolition of the old buildings that are obsolete.
No longer being used.
No longer being used. The power is off. We have so much exciting things going on at the fairgrounds too. We have a brand new expo facility which we opened this year. The flea market vendors are loving it. We've got a ton of new events this year alone. I think we've had 20 plus events at the new expo facility, and we've also had I think around 200,000 new revenue, just new events that have happened. In addition to having I think our electricity bills around 40% less, just having a new modern facility. So we really want to build upon that momentum at the expo as well as the surrounding area. A dog park that is just full every day. You drive by there, walking trails. So there's a lot of excitement going on. We just want to continue to build upon that.
I want to go back to 18 months ago when the Metro Council approved this deal to bring the soccer stadium, build the soccer stadium. Then there was a deadline to start construction, and as a news organization, we have been making calls for the past 4 months saying, what's the delay, and not getting a response from the mayor's office. As the Metro Council member of this area, I'm sure you were asking questions too. Were you getting a response?
Sure. So I had a couple of early conversations with the mayor, and good conversations with the mayor. Understood where he was coming from, why he wanted to take a look at certain items. Didn't mean we agreed, but I totally understood where he was coming from. Those lines of communication have gone silent. And so I talk a whole lot more with y'all than I do with the mayor's office these days. And I think that's what I'm hearing across the board, is that folks just aren't getting the kind of communication that they would like to see.
All right, it is open line, so I do want to get right to the phone lines, and we encourage your calls. The number is on the bottom of the screen, 615-737 plus is the number to call. Derek, you are on the line. Go ahead with your comment or question.
Yes, I was calling, first of all, good evening.
Good evening.
And my question is to the councilman. I thought you said about a few years ago that you were going to work when you were running, because I live in your district, and I'm a member of the 12th South Community Group. But we were told you were going to try to get rid of that racing car track that's been a nuisance since I was born here. It's been a nuisance since the 60s, since we moved in this neighborhood, and probably way before you were born. But every Saturday night and Friday night, all you would hear, and I live over here on Vaux Lane, all you hear is that noise of these NASCAR cars going around in a circle, back and forth, back and forth. And, you know, it's that's the kind of crowd that generates is really not what we need in this part of town. And I think it's a piece of eyesore. I think it's hickey and hillbilly, and I don't want it. But you got a whole bunch of people who want to keep the old Nashville and keep that kind of stuff going. But that track needs to go before anything. Before we talk about the soccer or anything, that NASCAR track needs to go and put it out in Wilson County somewhere. But it needs to go, and that's all I have to say.
All right, Derek, thank you. And I'm glad Derek brought this up, because in a lot of ways, this is almost starting to turn into a soccer versus racing debate. And then we throw in the 8C parcel of land, that 2.4 acres. So let's respond to Derek, and let's talk about racing.
Yeah, first of all, so Derek, thanks for your call. So a big part of what let's try and separate two ththings here. So as we're aware, Charter maintains 3 uses, right? One of which is racing. So there are local races that occur at the track. Fair Board's actually contracting with a new vendor this coming year. But then what complicates this whole issue is something Derek had referred to, which was NASCAR, right? And the problem is that there are people coming in offering to bring NASCAR races here, but they don't have any plan that is feasible on the footprint of the current racetrack. They don't have any funding, and they're not having the same kind of community conversations and open meetings that we've had as a community the last several years about these uses. So when all this was passed, it was to maintain every current use and enhance those uses in the case of the Expo Center. And then it was to bring in new uses as well to maintain and increase the vitality of that property for years to come. There is no doubt about it. Racing has a huge impact on the communities around there, including the community I live in and community I represent, including Derek's area. We've been trying for years, and we've worked really well with Fair Board as neighbors to try to put some limitations and some guardrails on that. Unfortunately, that's not the conversation we're having. We have a third party that's coming in saying they want to come in, they want to do more events, but we don't know how many, we don't know what kinds, and they're not having the conversation with the community. Quite frankly, I, as a council member, expect anybody who wants to come into the communities I represent to have.
Who are they having the conversation with? The mayor's office?
They're having the conversation with the mayor's office, and really unless Caleb's having conversations I don't know about.
What about the Fair Board here? It seems like you should be involved in this.
One would think. We've had some prior conversations, but it's nothing of late. We have one board member who has really been the board designee for a lot of those discussions, and according to a news report the other day, he's not heard anything since about July. So to Councilman Sledge's opinion, I think we want to look at some of the same items, have sure that have the community impact, get some of the details. We're talking a lot of conceptual things right now, but we really don't know what exactly
Would the Fair Board like to see NASCAR there? Like to see more races there?
It's our job as a Fair Board to ensure that racing is successful as it can be there. Obviously, we've had our challenges at the Fair Board in terms of different vendors. We've just gone through another race car track operator. Unfortunately, the second one in the last decade that has not worked out. So we're excited that we've got a new operator that we've just contracted with to actually save racing this year because, as I mentioned, our last operator, is actually not paid the fair board over the last year and a half or so. So we're almost owed $200,000 because of the lack of success in racing. So I think we, as the fair board, are open to all options that could make racing successful, whether it's NASCAR or other vendors, but we're waiting to hear about the details of those.
And to go back to Derek's point when he says, the community surrounding the area is impacted by the racing, is that taken into account as you talk to someone new about how this will operate?
Very, very much so. We have a lot of public input and stakeholders. We have community groups that Councilman Sledge is very aware of, and they have monthly meetings with the racetrack operator and the community groups to ensure that everything is done above reproach and the contract is withheld, because there's a lot of noise issues. There's a school right next to the racetrack, and so we want to make sure all those stakeholders are taken into account.
Okay, let's go back to the lines. Taylor's on the line. Taylor, go ahead with your comment or question. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the program.
Sure.
Let me start out and say I totally support the mayor and his look at what's taking place at those fairgrounds. The city voted several years ago as to their interest in the fairgrounds. They did not, though, allow this program to go before the citizens as a vote that it should have. And this proposal that was put together and approved 18 months ago is one of the biggest scams that's ever tried to be pulled on the city. There was no firm construction costs. There was all kinds of things that were never put in agreed signatures and so forth. And the finance department fooled these council members as if though they were dealing with children on a contract that is totally out of hand. And now that the mayor agreed to a soccer stadium when he was running for mayor, I can see that. But I'm sure he did not know the details of what was taking place over there. He has now seen the scam for what it is and who's behind it, and I totally oppose it and think the court action should go forward and decide this thing. That's my point, and I thank you for the program.
Okay, Taylor, thank you so very much. And I know that he is not alone with how he feels about that.
Sure. So Taylor, thanks for responding. So there's a couple of things there. So when the council went through our voting process and our discussions, in fact, one of the things that got put into that bill amended was to say that there were any cost overruns on the stadium, that the team would be responsible for that. In fact, Councilmember Mendez is the one who put that in. It was a very good move. It protected the taxpayer and made sure that we weren't going to be paying more than what the council was putting forth to say these are the bonds that would be issued. I do want to note that state law says that the bonds we're using, which are called revenue bonds, cannot be put to a referendum. So he referred a little bit to a referendum or a vote.
Sure.
Revenue bonds are paid back, right, from the revenues that occur from what's being built. What we passed is that the team would pay back from their revenues, would pay back the revenue bonds. The deal had a small, what we call backstop to it in case nobody came to any game or any event. The team's newest negotiation has removed all that. So that's why we say this stadium is 100% privately financed. And the additional, what we'll call costs, or infrastructure costs, the team has said they'll cover those too. So I do want to make one point of clarification. There has been some talk about infrastructure money that we already put forward. We haven't spent that money because we haven't built the infrastructure. So we've been waiting to see, okay, how much more is it going to cost? The team says we're going to cover it. That's why this deal is so good, because the team's taking on all the overruns.
So why do you think the mayor is not having an announcement right now?
I wish I could tell you. We don't know, because we're not having that conversation. Instead, we're having this back and forth on this small piece of land that, quite frankly, we should be going forward. Should just be going forward.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break. Leslie, I know you're on the line. Stay where you are. We're going to get to more of your calls right after this. Stay with us.